Live from the bunker in the middle of the Ozarks, three people wondering desperately if they can think a happy thought. It's the Critic, the Geek, and the Girl on SiftPop. Just think a happy thought, okay?
Yeah. That has a whole new meaning now.
Welcome. We are excited to talk a little bit about Pan, the new Peter Pan movie, as well as the TV show The Muppets, their latest invasion onto our television screens.
They're Muppets.
The Muppets. We're going to talk Pern.
Muppets and Pern.
We're going to talk Pern. No, we should not talk Pern. That's a no longer safe topic. If we want to talk about Pern, we can do that on no longer safe.
That was good.
That was really good. That's the amazing Andrew, Mr. Flick Freaks himself, joining with us once again.
An entire movie about pirates, not a single one of them said ahoy.
That is so true.
I don't know why is that? Why wouldn't they say ahoy?
I was waiting the entire time just so I could bring it up, but not a single one of them did.
That's a
that
shame.
must be really disappointing.
That is a shame, an absolute shame. Thank you for joining us, whether it be live or whether it be later in the podcast feed. We love chat and pop culture, and we're excited to do it again. We call ourselves the Critic, the Geek, and the Girl, and kind of the geek seat rotates a little bit, but
the geek seat literally rotates. He's
and creaks while it does it.
He's in a sturdy bar stool that swivels, so it's quite literal.
Very comfortable, though.
Basically, I, as the critic, am kind of that critical eye. The geek is like that obsessive eye that looks at everything, and then Danae is the eye that doesn't really care about movies. Not that has anything to do with being a girl.
This movie has mermaids. That's my perspective.
But
I'm just the girl. It just made sense, the critic, the geek, and the girl.
I always feel bad. I always feel bad when we say that, like that we're like putting some gender stereotypes on like what the girl's role. No, this is Danae's role. Not every girl would be like that. Just this is Danae's role in the situation, right?
You can't just say the critic, the geek, and Danae.
Well, you could.
It just doesn't roll off the tongue as easy.
Well, let's get into it. Play a little clip from Pan, and then we'll talk a little bit about the movie and what we thought.
We have an ancient prophecy from when the fairy kingdoms reigned on this island. The prophecy tells of a boy, born of the love between a fairy prince and a human girl. A boy who would be disappeared from this world until he was old enough to return and lead an uprising against me. A boy, so says the prophecy, who could fly.
Good dramatic pause there, Hugh Jackman. Amazing dramatic pause.
Should we start right with Hugh Jackman?
No, we should start with our initial overall thoughts. We should start with liked it, loved it, it was okay, didn't like it, hated it.
Dreamy eyes right now.
Every time we have to follow the rules. What's going on?
Well, just to give kind of a general idea of what we thought. I'm going to start with Andrew. Andrew, liked it, loved it, it was okay, didn't like it, hated it.
Indifferent, leaning towards... No, I'm just going to stick with indifferent.
Indifferent.
All
I
right.
liked it.
Danae goes with liked it. I'm going to go with it was okay. Indifferent. And if I were to lean, it would be towards the liked it. But I just have to go with it. It was like there's too many flaws for me to go to liked it. And that's a difficult thing for me. Well, this could be interesting then. Danae appears to have really enjoyed it. So loved it though.
I had a good time.
Okay.
I don't know that I loved it like I've loved some of the movies I've seen recently, but I had a really good time in this.
Cool.
I kept making notes throughout the movie, and 98% of them are like, "Ooh, that was pretty." So
yeah, can we start there? That the movie was visually beautiful.
Yeah,
really
that's a good place to start. As we start with the positives, I think that's one that we can all agree on. The visual interpretation of Neverland in this world, and even the world of London in World War II or whatever, and the way these characters were over the top but still a part of this universe. I thought visually worked really well. Mm-hmm. Was spectacular. What were some of the visuals you remember?
Oh my goodness.
Without going into spoilers, which we'll do later.
There are. Let's see. When we're approaching Neverland for the first time, it's just all very inventive, and it's a different approach to this universe.
Yeah,
and it's got a lot of creativity to it. And
as soon as I asked that question, I realized all the things I'm thinking of, I don't want to spoil for somebody. Like, I want them to have that experience of seeing.
Just sometimes the camera will kind of pan out over a landscape. And
I see what you did there.
I didn't mean to, but it did.
Oh, you went there.
Sorry, that pun kind of petered out, but go ahead.
Oh, no. Is this going to happen the entire review?
Just give me the hook if you want me to stop. I will, I promise.
I'm going to hurt somebody. I don't want to get upset.
Go ahead.
So anyways, the camera would move over and whatever it was looking at would just be beautiful. And, there is obviously CG in this. Some of it's obvious, but for the most part, I thought that they did a really great job of like overlaying. I don't even know where some of these scenes came from. There's forests, there's, rock, there's clouds. Like, did they take real stuff and then just super CG it? Was it all CG? I don't know, but it looked really believable, and I really liked that.
Yeah, the part that I really liked is it's all around Neverland, and every single place you go, it's completely different. It's not one set environment. It's like you go here, it's completely different from the last scene that you were in. Are they saying something?
Danae's in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Too many flaws, including a lack of helicopters and ahoys, was the one that caused me to laugh. And then also, the BDG was upset because he couldn't keep up with your puns, Aaron.
Well, I've got a microphone in front of me. You have a keyboard. I've got a little bit of an advantage.
Oh, man, these puns they're flying through. This is going to be a fun chat.
That is an encouragement. That's a good reason to listen live, right? Because you get to be in the chat. You get to kind of feel what's going on with those.
And then
those
I
kind
can take their jokes.
And then Danae can
sound
just
really good.
Steal their jokes. Make it work that way. What else did you like, Andrew, as you were talking about that stuff?
I'll just stick with visually. It's kind of generic, but you guys would know what I'm talking about if you saw the movie. The first time you get to Neverland and you see, quote unquote, the bubbles, I'm like, okay,
that's the one I was thinking of too.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to spoil the effect, but that's a good way to say it.
It's just the bubbles. We'll just call it that.
There was a lot of really clever storytelling in this. I felt there's a couple of times in this movie where they kind of give like backstory of what had happened, because this is Pan's origin story essentially. And so when Peter lands in Neverland and he gets involved in these different characters and kind of goes through Neverland, at several points he himself is trying to kind of learn about the environment, and there's these storytelling techniques that the people use to kind of show him things that are going on and that have happened in the past. I loved how they did that, and I thought it was very, very creative. The costuming was fun and
colorful.
It was colorful and beautiful. It was really inventive in some of the fight scenes. There was some really inventive ways to, kind of show the intensity of the fights.
I agree with what you're saying about the storytelling. I actually do. And a lot of the flaws I have were with aspects of storytelling, but not with the idea of spinning a yarn. I thought they spun a good yarn. I thought it was an interesting concept for the origin story of these characters. So when I say that, I mean like the foundation of what they decided to do with Peter Pan's origin story was interesting to me. What they decided to do with who Captain Hook was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And the execution had a little bit lacking as far as I was concerned, but I did like the germ of the idea that they had there. I also really liked, as we're continuing with positives, Hugh Jackman. I thought he was my number one. Great.
Hugh Jackman was incredible.
Yeah.
But I have to admit something.
What?
So earlier we were reviewing this on our radio show, and Aaron mentions Hugh Jackman, and I was like, Hugh Jackman was in this?
Oh, really?
I didn't recognize him at all. I had no idea.
Yeah.
He wasn't dreamy enough.
Captain Blackbeard was Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
He was incredible.
That first scene, his appearance scene is my favorite scene in the movie. His introduction to the movie.
Oh, where he's just walking out and they're singing Nirvana?
Yes. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, because I do want to go into that. But he was the perfect amount of over the top. Like, it wasn't so far over the top that, you lost interest.
Right.
But it was over the top enough that it gave you that jolt of creative energy.
Isn't it weird that in a movie that's this psychedelic, not psychedelic's probably a bad word to say, but, just colorful and loud, he is the most grounded thing in the movie with his performance?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something interesting about, you can see that extra level of acting ability that he has on screen that some of the others don't have, because there's a depth to his performance that a lot of the others don't have.
Well, there's this one particular scene where he kind of goes from this over the top captain character, and he really gets into some of his like deeper emotion. And that was one of my favorite scenes of the movie. As serious as it was, I was really captivated by the performance, and it was really, really moving. The what he's basically saying is what Neverland is to him as Blackbeard. And I love the dialogue. I thought the script was really fun and it kept moving, but it had like this, it wasn't too superficial. It wasn't too ornate. It was just right in the middle for me the whole time. And when he delivers that performance, just the style of dialogue and how they're delivering their, like how they're talking to each other, and some of it's very artistic and has flair to it, and I really enjoyed it. But in particular, we're trying to figure out this Blackbeard character, because here's this character in Neverland I'm not used to perceiving, and so I'm kind of trying to get used to, like, okay, who is he? And Hugh Jackman really brought him to life, and when he shows that depth, that one particular scene where he's kind of just having a one-on-one with Peter, I was really moved by it.
How many people do you think? A question as an aside. How many people do you think saw the poster for this movie or an advertisement for this movie, half saw it or whatever, and thought that Hugh Jackman was playing Captain Hook? Because
I'd say more than 50%.
I think so too. I think in the advertising, if you're just kind of glancing at what they're doing, you're thinking, oh, okay, they're doing a Peter Pan story. Hugh Jackman is Captain Hook and that kind of stuff. And that was kind of a revelation to me as it continued to go, oh, we're getting into Captain Hook's origin story too, and kind of who he was. And of all the origins that they played with, I thought his was the most drastic turn. Like the one that you go, okay, there's still some story to be told with his origin story. And maybe we can go more into it in spoilers.
I was about to say, I got a lot to say about that in the spoiler section.
Because I don't want to give away his story arc at all in this, in case you want to see it without being spoiled. But of all the characters, his was the one I was like, oh, that is really interesting where that could go. And I don't know that a lot of that is seen in this movie. I think they're maybe setting up sequels where maybe we'll get some more of that. I got that exact
feeling too.
But it was definitely there for sure. Any other positives you guys wanted to throw out as we kind of continue on?
What I did have a few.
I did think it was also the whole movie the entire way through had just a creative finger on every element. It's like I could imagine that the people who kind of sat down to put this movie together were like, how can we think about these things differently? The mermaids, for example, were one of my favorite
sections.
Not just the section was really interesting, but just to watch how they interpreted what a mermaid is, because everyone has a different interpretation. Mm-hmm. There's like the basic one.
It was very unique.
Woman with tail. Mm-hmm. Woman with tail, long hair. That's pretty basic. Mm-hmm. And so some of that stuff, you're like,
strategic seashells.
Right.
Yeah.
But this one was just a little bit different enough, and I don't want to spoil it for you in case you go see it. So we'll talk about it maybe a little bit more in detail in the spoiler section. But I really liked that. I really enjoyed.
You can tell there was a lot of thought put into the creative ideas.
So. Yeah.
And I that's one of the reasons I want to make sure we give props where props are due, because you can tell somebody cared. It's not like you watch this movie and go, oh, they just threw this together and they didn't care.
And
somebody really cared.
I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, is that this wasn't a throwaway, let's just make some money movie. The people who are in it, you can tell they care about what they're doing. And I thought that the people who created it cared about what they were doing. And so even though I'm watching a kid film, and even though I'm, watching something that I probably am not going to remember, in depth for very long, it was still something that I was like, yeah, that was okay.
Danae, you touch on something that could go in the positive section for me as well. You called it a kid film. It is PG, not even PG-13. They were very, very careful to, any of the insinuated death or those kind of things were all completely off screen and without much impact.
Yep.
Like they, even the ones that had a story impact didn't have like a scenic impact. There was no sound, there was no vision of it. You just knew it happened.
Yep.
It was very intentional. This is the kind of movie I would have loved as a kid.
Right.
Like
I know.
If I could get into my 8-year-old brain, or my 10-year-old brain,
I'm
and
very
watch
close
this
to my 8 and 10-year-old brain. I think that's why I enjoyed it so much.
That might be part of it. That might be part of it. But I would have absolutely, because you look at a movie like, I don't know, let's just say like The Never-Ending Story. There are a lot of flaws in that movie too, but when I was 10, movie was the bomb diggity,
This has that feel to it, to be honest. It has that kind of feel to it where like, it's like, yeah, I think this could be something that kids and families can really enjoy. Like it's one that I would, recommend people getting the DVD for and taking home and having so the kids can watch.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention my 40-year-old eyes, they didn't see it the same way. Exactly. But my 10-year-old eyes would have absolutely loved this thing.
See, that's exactly what I was going to say, that this movie does a great job of, like, it's a kid's movie, but if you're looking for a movie to bring back, like, a resurgence of your childhood nostalgia...
It's great.
I don't think it works, like, for me personally, I'm like, I want a movie that got me excited about that world, like Hook did with Robin Williams, or the 1953 movie. And I'm like, is it going to make me feel like a kid again? Like, am I going to believe in happy thoughts? Can I believe that I can fly? And I didn't feel like a kid again when I was watching this movie.
That's interesting. And I wonder if it's because they're focusing so much on Peter Pan. Because, or, his origin story, it's like his development in a way. And when you're watching Peter Pan, I mean, yeah, you're watching Peter Pan and Wendy, but you're putting yourself into the shoes of the kids who are being taken away by Peter Pan. Like, you're being swept away by Peter Pan. We weren't really invited into the movie the same way.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that's sort of what you're
I think
feeling.
Part of it also has to do with the fact that this character, Peter Pan, is not the Peter Pan we would get excited about being. Like, so for instance,
right, yeah.
A lot of this is wish fulfillment, these kind of movies. Like, oh, I want to be able to do that. And this Peter Pan was learning the ropes so much that I didn't necessarily want to be him. And by the time he kind of became Peter Pan, he still wasn't really Peter Pan. Not yet. Like, it was just, so you never got that sense of, oh, that's amazing. I would love to be able to do that, kind of thing. And that's a big part of these kind of movies.
I did have one last positive that I had written down. Levi Miller, the kid who plays Peter Pan, as far as a child actor goes, he did a pretty good job.
I also said that. That was one of my positives too. I thought he did a really great job.
I thought he did fine. Especially, I like that you qualified it as a child actor, because child actors are hit and miss.
Very much so.
Very much so. And I thought he was more hit than miss. I will say, and let's move this into kind of the issues that we had with the movie. I will say that for me, his performance is indicating one of my major issues with the movie. I never felt emotion for him. Like, I never felt like I was a part of his world enough to, like, that the heart was there enough for me to really feel what he was going through. I understood what he was going through intellectually. I just never felt it.
That's
and
exactly
the only performance I felt was Hugh Jackman,
exactly.
who was the bad guy. So if I'm not feeling the emotions of any of the protagonists, then I'm left in a place where I just don't care as much about the story and what's going on.
If I were a really young child, I think I would be relating to this young Peter Pan character. And so maybe I would be experiencing emotion because I would be on that level. But the emotions that I experienced were like visual excitement, and like sometimes the songs and the music would kick in and I'd feel something that way. But as far as like feeling emotion in deep ways like I've maybe experienced in other movies, I'm with you there too. It didn't go too deep for me.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a lack of heart for me overall. It was one of my major issues. Andrew, what about you? What are some of the things that stood out as negatives in this?
The biggest negative I have is Garrett Hedlund's performance as Captain Hook.
No, I can't wait to talk about this.
It was very, very, very bad. To me, he sounded like Heath Ledger's Joker with a frog in his throat. I was just waiting for him to go, "You want to know how I got these scars?" That's exactly what it sounded like to me.
Trick?
Yeah. How about a magic trick? I'm like, really? I never once could I have believed that he would grow up, quote unquote, to become Captain Hook.
Yeah.
Never believed it for a second.
Yeah, interesting. Tanae, you looked like you...
That was my worst thing.
In total agreement
I really
with that.
did not enjoy that performance. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it was voiced over.
What?
No, I didn't notice that.
Because there were several times, and I was confused about what they were doing. There were several times where his mouth said heck, but the word said hell.
Really?
So there was that. That happened a couple times towards the beginning.
Now, why would they do that? That's interesting.
But then later on, they'll say, bloody hell or something like that, and it was fine. So I was like, okay, they're not concerned. And then Captain Hook says hell again at some point. I'm like, okay, what was that? So maybe they just made it was weird. And
I did not notice that. That's a very specific observation.
So in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe I didn't see that. Maybe that wasn't right. But the way that he was speaking wasn't matching up sometimes with his mouth a little bit towards the very beginning. And so I was like, I wonder if they replaced the voice and we're not hearing the actual actor's voice. The whole movie, I was thinking that because, like you said, his vocal performance and his, like, the way that he was physically performing the role
he always
were
looked at
very
you from the side of his
distracting.
face.
It's very distracting to me. And I mentioned this to Aaron earlier, and I was like, I really didn't like the performance from the Hook character, and I really enjoyed the performance of the little boy that was playing Peter Pan. And Aaron, how did you respond to that?
My response is basically, I think it's a swing and a miss based on what he was asked to do. Like, I feel like he was very much directed to do that voice, give that character. And whereas, and we talked about this a little bit ago, whereas Hugh Jackman can be over the top and still have depth and believability, his over the top performance felt too over the top to where it wasn't believable and felt distracting. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't blame him as much as I blame
Like the direction,
okay. What he was asked to do, or maybe even the casting. Maybe they could have got somebody better,
when we're first
to do that.
Introduced to his character, there's something that flips in him at some point when they go from where they start off together in their journey into like the next part of their adventure together.
Yeah.
And that very first part of them meeting, how James Hook and Peter Pan meet in this version, that environment, I don't know if it's just he was more muted and almost seemed a little bit more reliable and wise. He had these qualities that were interesting, but then once they break out into this next part of their adventure, it changes and he kind of gets a little bit crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe that's just part, of Captain Hook.
But
he's just a little bit nutty.
At least it's interesting. Like, at least there's something interesting there. It is distracting, but at least there's something there where you go, okay, Captain Hook, the character we know, has to be a little off. The guy is a little crazy, right? So you have to see a seed of that in this character somewhere.
And there was like the flourishes of the hand and the gestures. So I think, again, once you said that about your perspective on the performance aspect, I thought, maybe that's
I just think
true.
he missed. I think it was I just think it was a bad effort at a good idea.
When you have somebody like when you have a performance like what he's doing in the same scene with a child actor who is wide-eyed and a bland tiger lily who is
that's
just...
what I wanted to get to.
I think
it's the background.
She was the worst performance for me because she wasn't interesting at all.
So I think maybe we're at in that kind of place where his performance is standing out even more because it is so much more vibrant than the other two characters that are often with him. Although I do want to mention Smee, who, though we're kind of in the stuff that we didn't like as much, when he was in there, I thought that James worked better, or that Hook worked better, because they kind of play off of each other pretty well.
Not enough Smee.
Not enough Smee.
I thought he was good, and they didn't use him in the right way. I just felt like his character was so misused in this and underused. And I thought he was good. But I just want to get back to Tiger Lily just to emphasize that was the biggest miss in the movie for me, acting wise. I don't get the casting. I don't get the performance. I don't get the costuming. I don't get any of that. What they did with the natives. I don't get it.
The natives' outfits reminded me a little bit of Hook. When they with the Lost Boys Hook and just kind of that sort of like fun, free, a lot of fabric, a lot of color, which I think it was really beautiful to look at. So, but I understand what you're saying, because that's a whimsical part of Neverland, right? Like, but they did combine in some kind of this element of whimsicalness with natives, and it did lose a little bit of maybe what Tiger Lily was when we were reading the books and watching the show when we were kids.
And I don't buy for a second. Is this a spoiler? I don't buy for a second the relationship she had with Hook. No, I don't buy that for a second. Whatever that was, I don't buy it.
Yeah, it's a confusing. It attempts to go into confusing directions.
I didn't buy
never
it
lands
story-wise.
really
I didn't buy it character-wise. I didn't buy it performance-wise. It did not work for me at all.
It seems to me the writer of this film saw the 1953 Disney cartoon. He's like, he saw it once, and he's like, I can make a prequel. He didn't know any of what could be considered lore of like the backstory of how some characters meet up with each other, and I'm like, Because that doesn't make sense.
You know, for me, when you're starting an origin story, they can all start off as friends. They can all start off, I mean, they're not quite friends in the film throughout the most of it. You know, there's ups and downs in all these different kinds of ways that they're interacting. But I find myself kind of trying to fill in the gap with imagination and saying, you know, maybe these guys were really good friends at the beginning and then something happens and then we see their story develop when we meet up with them later on with the stories that we know. So, do you know?
Yeah, no, it left a lot of room for sequels to develop that stuff, and I think purposefully so. I actually have several other things on the negative side.
Okay.
I have one, but I want to ask you guys, music, could that be considered a spoiler, or can we talk about that now?
We already kind of mentioned it. I think it's fine. Let's just put it this way, and we'll talk about this next. Okay. There is music in Neverland that is anachronistic.
Yeah.
In other words, it's music that was written way after World War II, where the story, takes place.
way after World War II.
That not only is in the background, but the actors are singing it.
Yeah.
As a part of like a warrior chant kind of thing.
Yeah.
I really wish we did our spoilers live sometimes because I want to feel the reaction when we talk about the song that they sing. That's going to be a really fun thing. But yeah, I think we should wait on that.
2 songs that they sang. I'm
yeah.
Like, really?
There's probably more.
Here's where I went. That doesn't make sense. Well, it's Neverland. Okay, I'll give it to you. And it's just like, whatever. It's Neverland. Anything can happen. Maybe Neverland exists outside of time.
Yeah.
They have access to,
But you had to do that at the very beginning of the movie, though.
Did it seem like a cop-out? Like, we're not witty enough or we don't have time to come up with our own music. We're just going to steal this and hopefully some people...
But you know what? That scene was my favorite scene of the movie.
Because it was the introduction of Blackbeard.
Yes. So it's hard for me to dislike the choice when I love that scene so much.
It was a great scene.
And I don't know how much of that depends on that choice of music.
I think, personally, they could have chosen any random song, and just the way his demeanor and the way he carried himself, we would have believed it, and we would have thought it was an amazing scene. So you take him out of that, because, remember, he comes out halfway through that song, and before that you're like, what? And then as soon as he comes out, you're like, oh, okay, so you could have taken any song that was just originally composed, and you would have thought it was an incredible scene. That's what I think.
Could be. I remember, I forget what the movie was called. I think it was Knight's Tale, maybe, or something.
Yeah,
it was a Knight's movie. Heath Ledger, and they come out and they're doing "We Will Rock You." We Will Rock You in the stands.
Yeah,
it's not that bad for me. Like, that just annoyed the snot out of me. This is more like, okay, you can kind of give them the fantastical element, and give a little grace on it.
It's funny you mention that, because in this movie, whenever that song came on, the first thing I thought of was Knight's Tale. That's exactly what I thought of. I'm like,
you had that feel.
Oh, you're doing that thing again. Okay, I remember when you did that and how it didn't work.
Question in the chat was, did they bust out the song Whip Nay Nay? And I was able to thankfully say no, that was not the song.
Oh, I was going to say you're going to have to wait for the spoilers.
You missed it. And you didn't see Tinkerbell doing the Whip Nay Nay?
And then the BDG says Tiger Lily whips her hair. Whips her hair.
Back and forth.
Whips her hair back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah, no, she's not even that interesting. I don't even think she whips her hair back and forth.
No.
And it's funny because Rooney Mara is normally an incredible actress.
I don't know what happened, man.
Yeah.
It was the more she was on screen, the more I just was bored.
I personally still liked her performance more than Hooks.
But at least he was trying for something, At least it was interesting in some way. I'd rather see somebody try and spectacularly fail than just to stand in the background.
I think she was trying to be just, I don't want to say bland. I think she was trying to not overact it, and I think she failed on one spectrum where Garrett Hedlund failed on the other end of that spectrum.
That's a good way to say it. I think that's fair.
I think that her character could have been completely received different. Like, we would have really received her performance differently if they would have done one key thing with her and made her like, because she's like the warrior princess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she should have been the warrior, and should have played that role the entire time.
Yeah.
And she does get to fight, and she does get to do the cool things. We do get to see her do that, but there's a moment in the movie where she takes a back seat. And I think that's whenever I got confused about who she was.
I got to tell you, even in the quote-unquote moments she got to do that parts, I still felt like she was in the back seat. even in those fight scenes.
Here's a good way to put it.
It was beautiful the whole time, so that's cool.
It was beautiful.
Here's a good way to put it. They were given 2 different directions. The director told Rooney Mara, okay, we're going for a realistic, down-to-earth Peter Pan movie. And then he told Garrett Hedlund, we're going for this crazy, colorful Tim Burton, massive
Hunger
character.
Games looking.
Yeah. And that's the performance. So zero chemistry between every single person in that movie.
Yeah. You feel almost like he was told, this is your chance to be, Johnny Depp in Pirates. This is
perfect.
This is your chance to do something like that and be weird, and it just missed. It just didn't work.
It's amazing we're talking about so many negatives, and yet we're all okay with the movie.
I think it's
kind of the nitpicky stuff.
It's that fantasy aspect of it. But like I said, there are a lot of flaws here.
Those flaws keep it in a realm where, like, if it could have been tweaked a little bit, it would have taken it from a kid's movie into like a really impactful movie, like you were talking about earlier with wishing it was something like Hook, for example.
Let me check in on a couple more things. CG. I thought the CG of the flying boy was awful.
Terrible.
I like, there were times, I was just like, are you kidding me? We just went to Polar Express.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Polar Express
we are in the uncanny valley.
Terrifying. That's a terrifying movie.
I was just like, I cannot believe in today's day and age, it was like, oh, real boy. Oh, fake boy. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't the only one that saw that.
For sure.
Every time he flew, it was over for me. It was just like,
Here's a teaser for the spoiler area. I'm just going to say 2 words, and I'm just going to quit right there. Last Airbender. I want to see if you guys know what I'm talking about.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
You've seen the TV show.
Oh, yeah.
The TV show. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I'm excited to find out what you're referencing later. I mean, I love The Last Airbender, so I'm just missing something. But and then actually, I think I mentioned. Oh no. The other thing I wanted to check in on are the winks and nods throughout the movie.
I liked those.
Okay, I wanted to see if you liked them or didn't like them. I think I fell on the side of not liking them, but
I'm assuming you're talking about like where a character would use a common phrase that you would see.
Yes.
What you would have heard.
I think I can give a good one that's not a spoiler because it has nothing to do with the story, but at one point Captain Hook says something about, you don't have to crow about it.
You didn't.
That's a direct reference from.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Okay, so for me, it's just like,
I loved it.
It feels forced in some way, and instead of like loving it, I just go, come on.
For me,
make it feel natural.
It was part of like part of the lingo of what would be going on.
There were parts where I agree with Aaron, parts I agree with you. Parts like when you find out Hook's afraid of crocodiles. Like, yes. I like that part because it's a reminder that this is a prequel and that these characters do have emotions that are going to impact them later on.
There's a moment in that scene that I want to talk about in the spoilers that I didn't like, but overall, I don't mind that. That feels natural.
First clue would have been that he has both hands.
And that it's a prequel?
His hand,
That it's a prequel, yeah.
So,
also, Peter Pan is very
I think that's
young.
fair. I think they're hit and miss.
Yeah.
I do think some of them work.
Mind it.
Some of them I rolled my eyes at. The Crow one I rolled my eyes at. There were a couple others that I listed, but I don't need to go into all of them. But yeah, the one. Okay, I want to say the one more because it really was the worst one for me. Where he was like, I forget who said it, but somebody told James Hook. Well, it's or he said something like well, I'm not a pirate, and then somebody said,
"Oh,
yes." I was like, "Oh, I hated that. I hated that.
I didn't like that either."
That's such. I mean, it's so forced, and it's like it presumes pre-knowledge that they don't have of some. Like, why would you say that unless you knew that he would be some? I don't know. It felt really forced. So that was probably the main example for me of those things.
Yeah, that was the most forced one. That definitely sat with me awkwardly.
Are we ready for one last thing before we move on?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
All right, Tanae, you want to start? What's your one last thing about Pan?
I would wait until this is something that maybe plays on TV for the adults, and just have it on and kind of watch it. There are some really beautiful things I think people could enjoy. I don't know that it's something like you need, like a must see, but I thought Hugh Jackman did a great job, and I think it's worth watching to see his performance in it. And I thought that the big fight scene at the end is really interesting and creative. So it's kind of like one of those where if you just have nothing else to do but put a movie on and just watch it, this could be that one.
I'll go next, and I will answer the question in the comments. Is it as forced as the catchphrases in Fantastic Four? No, nothing is as forced as the catchphrases in Fantastic Four.
That was a terrible movie.
They are awful.
That
so
was
no,
such a bad
not
movie.
quite on that level. My one last thing, I wanted to talk about the sense of humor in this movie. I didn't think it worked. I thought the movie was cute at points. I thought the movie was silly at points, but I never felt like this movie was funny. There weren't a lot of moments where I laughed.
If you did laugh, it was at Smee.
Yeah, maybe, but even that, like, I just never felt during this movie, oh, this is hilarious. You know, like, there's some movies, like we were watching The Martian last week, this huge drama, and it was hilarious, you know? This movie it wasn't really funny, and I felt that was a miss, and that may be part of the reason, you know, for some of the down reaction.
I'm getting razzed in chat.
Oh, yeah?
Fight scene. Have you no sense of spoilers?
There are no helicopters.
No helicopters.
Good to mention.
Yeah.
Is that true? I don't know. I kind of consider those pirate ships helicopters.
Those pirate ships are cool.
Yeah, they were pretty amazing. What's your one last thing, Andrew?
Demon nuns. That's all I'm going to say. Demon nuns.
Right?
Yeah.
Those nuns were terrifying.
Well, at least especially the head nun.
Whoa.
Yeah.
My goodness.
She basically barks like a dog.
And
when
hisses.
she talks.
She hisses. She literally hisses.
Yeah. Yeah, she was scary. That was no joke. Yeah. If you have a nun aversion, don't go.
Over the last few weeks, I've decided a couple things. I don't ever want to climb Everest, and I don't ever want to be an orphan in London during World War II.
I just never want to be in London. Try and think of a single movie where London has been portrayed as happy. List one movie where good things happen in London.
All right, chat, we're looking to you.
Probably the Beatles movies, maybe. Those are lighthearted. Like Help. Is the parts of that in London? I don't know. I'm stretching, man.
Yeah. Nothing. It's always gloomy. It's always like dark and brooding.
Les Mis.
There's always pirate ships.
Les Mis.
Les Mis. That was Paris.
That's funny on several levels.
Right, it's Paris. V for Vendetta. Shanghai Nights.
I'm not asking for great movies, because honestly, a lot of good things didn't happen in London during V for Vendetta. It was just a fantastic movie.
Yeah. No, I think they're just proving your point.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
That's funny.
So yeah, overall, Danae liked it.
I did.
Kind of liked it, but there's just too many flaws to really get behind it.
I was going to say I was leaning more towards didn't like it, but I'm just going to stick with indifferent, because again, I'm not the target audience for this movie. If you want to take your kids to this movie, I'm sure they'll have a magnificent time watching it.
I think so. Although the kids in the theater with us didn't seem to be having a great time.
Shut up! The mom wasn't having a good time. Holy cow!
Yeah,
there was a little bit of family squabbling going on a few rows ahead of us. That was awkward. Although I will take that over the bringing your children to like the rated R movies that happens like every single time.
101 Dalmatians, was that in London?
101 Dalmatians.
It was New York, or was it?
It might have been London.
BDG says yes, it was.
All right.
It was still gloomy.
We may.
It was about dog murder.
It was about dog murder.
That's true.
What's so happy about dog murder?
Do you really think, how big would that coat have been if she murdered all 101 of those Dalmatians?
Awful.
Yeah.
That would she'd have had a few coats out of that, I think.
Yeah.
And on that note, we shall move on, talk a little bit about Before that, though, can we make the big announcement today? Can we go ahead and make this announcement on the podcast?
I would love to tell our nearest and dearest that we've got some really cool news.
Let it be known.
Okay, go ahead.
We are doing a live podcast recording in front of an audience. We have been asked to do the podcast live at a local coffee shop in November.
They are Classic Rock Coffee is the name of the company. You should go to the website, Classic Rock Coffee. Just Google it. You'll see it. And you can actually do a tour and you'll see the room we're in. It's on stage. There's lighting. We're going to have a live band there. We're going to be broadcasting live on Friday, the 20th of November.
Mm-hmm. It'll be an evening broadcast.
We're still going to do our show regularly for SiftPop. This is going to be like a special event, and we're going to be broadcasting live. We're going to have special events. We will have our special guests.
Guests, prizes.
Yeah.
We're going to have a blast. And also the band Nate and the Saints from Curb Records is going to be performing. We got a chance to hang out with Nate a little bit, and he's here in the area, and I think he's going to be a great friend of the show. We may have some exciting announcements to make at that live show about the future of Shoe the Dough and the different podcasts that we do.
Just be continuing to send us love. Thank you guys so much for all of your support, the positive messages that we get from you, and all the fun times that we always have together. It's really been an encouraging thing because we do have some super fun stuff, not even on the back burner. It's all on the front burner. We just have to wait for it to get to the right temperature
there's some big announcements coming, and we're really excited to give those to you.
I want to spoil it, but I can't yet. We can't. So
November 20th in Springfield, Missouri at Classic Rock Coffee. If you can make it, we would love to see you. We'd love to pack that place out. How many do you think we could fit in there?
I'm thinking about 100 and something.
Yeah, between 100
maybe?
and 200?
We'll see.
Somewhere in that range.
We're hoping to hit 100.
That's our goal. Have 100 people there live for the show.
In the chat, as we've been talking, Shoe the Dough Tour is already something that we've been thinking about, and it's definitely something that's possible considering we can be mobile. It's just all about logistics and timing. And because we do travel from time to time to Nashville and to Florida, those might be two places that we could consider doing another kind of live venue at some point in time. So if you have any ideas for us, you can send us emails, aaronanddanae@gmail.com with any ideas.
It'll be different, huh? Being like in a room with your live audience. See, we do the live audience thing. Like we have, people in chat who we chat with and during the show, and we like broadcasting live, but man, to have people like responding in the room, that's going to be interesting.
What's cool too is that we probably, like if we did go to Nashville, just as an example, like for our next one, I'm just making huge, big assumptions here.
Yes, you are.
That would be so much fun. We could get an artist to join us for that one too. They're everywhere. We could just walk out there.
I know who I could book for our SiftPop segment.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Mr. CinemaSins. My friend Jeremy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's there in Nashville.
Maybe instead of continuing to dream about the far, far future, though, we should continue to plan because we've got a lot to do between now and
Nashville as well.
November 20th. I know. We should do that.
Our friend from Nether region.
Okay.
Is in Nashville as well. So, yeah, that could be interesting. A lot of fun. Thank you guys for your continued support, your support at Patreon that makes it possible. $1 a month, $3 a month, just to help us out. Thanks again to so many who believe in what we do enough to put a couple bucks our way every month. It means the absolute world to us.
Yeah.
Let's talk Muppets. Muppets. It's time to something.
They don't use that.
Well, they kind of do. They reference it.
I would like to say that the introduction to the Muppets was so like, well, it's like Office, and there's a couple of other TV shows that it really reminds me of.
Oh yeah, it's a mockudrama. It's the Office. It's Parks and Rec. It's Modern Family.
Yeah,
where the characters break and talk to the camera about what's going on. Like there's a film crew there filming what they're doing. 30
Rock has that feel to it. Yes, I loved it. I had such a good time with it, but I didn't expect it. I did not expect that. I didn't watch any previews or anything, so I had no idea what to expect. So that was kind of fun to see them in like modern world. Like we're in the background, they've got like a board with all the sticky notes on it, and it's a really developed environment. The scenery is very full, so I was really excited to see that.
Somebody mentioned, and I'll mention this, and then let's get into our kind of initial overall thoughts. So I heard somebody mention, and I totally agree with this. When the Muppets started originally, they were kind of making light of the modern variety shows that were taking over television, where people would have guests on and performances, and so they were doing that. This is the same thing.
Yeah.
They're making fun of that modern, mockumentary and doing it at the same time. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting point. So what did you guys think? Andrew, start with you. Overall, what do you think?
I'm beyond infatuated with this show. I love it I think there's only 3 episodes that are out right now. Mm-hmm. Every single episode has been beyond hilarious. I'm loving it. It is definitely different from what we watched as kids, like with Muppet Babies and like Muppet Christmas Carol. It's more adult themed, like Fozzie and Kermit get drunk in a bar. I mean, come on, you don't... That's a little bit different.
Well, and they're having Muppet relations.
They're having Muppet
I mean, not on screen or anything, but I'm just saying it's very much evident. They're talking about their puppet sex lives
and drug use and stuff.
Yeah,
it's the show is, if you can go into it with an open mind, but at the same time I felt like a little kid watching the show, and I know I should be getting into this more later on. I'm supposed to be.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You obviously have strong feelings, so that's good.
I know. But as soon as I saw the show was coming back, like with the trailers and stuff that were on TV, I was like, oh, Muppets is coming back. And then when I watched the show, I'm like, oh, this is going to be special. This is going to be special.
Danae, what about you?
I am so exactly with you, Andrew.
You smitten that much?
I had such a fun time. The first episode, I was laughing and clapping, and I was
literally clapping.
Yes, and I know part of it is just that I love the Jim Henson Company. I love what they do. I love that Muppets are on ABC television, that they have a place in our society. You know, there's this feel to it too, where they did kind of like go by the wayside. Then they had the movie where they came back, you know, and then the movie was about them coming back, and then they're kind of actually back now. So they're riding this really fun wave, and I felt like the writing was fun and clever. And I was kind of in two places. I was back in my childhood, complete nostalgia, over the moon to see these characters. It was really interesting to experience the kind of like exuberance that I was experiencing. I was surprised at my own excitement. And so it was like double excitement, you know? But then there was also this part of me that was like, either I have become very perverted in my adult life and the Muppets are now perverse, or they're just more perverse. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you go back and you'll watch like a TV show or a movie or something.
There was some of that stuff with the original show.
And that's what I'm saying. And you don't pick up on it because you're a kid watching it, you know? And so,
but not necessarily in the movies. There's not a lot of that in the Muppet movies.
Yeah. Like,
so that's what my thing is. I'm like, either I've just gone gutter, or like,
or they have,
or they are really going into that more adult. And kind of started looking around at forums, things like that. And I'm glad that you kind of brought it up too. I think they're full on embracing the adult version of these characters. These characters have been around for a long time, and here we're getting to see something kind of new. So I was shocked a couple times because the Muppets are doing things and saying things I've never either known that they've said before. I'm just cluing in because I'm more adult now. I don't know. So I was shocked, and I was also excited.
So I guess I get to be the lone voice of dissent here. I did not have that euphoric experience that you guys had. In fact, I didn't like the first episode. Now, when I say that...
You are in the majority.
Really?
Every single forum and chat room I've been on, people don't like the show.
Okay.
Really?
I don't get it because I love it.
All right, well, let me explain what I experienced.
Okay.
And
Andrew, we have so much work to do. We've got to go save everyone.
I can only tell you my own personal experience. And I've come around a little bit. But during that first episode, and I don't know if it's some level of prudishness or, you know, whatever it is, I was like, these aren't the Muppets I know. They're not the Muppets I've fallen in love with.
No, they're not. They're different. That's true.
And I felt the twinge of this, and we even talked about this when they announced their breakup, like several months before the show started.
Yeah.
And there was something about that tweaked me wrong, and I was just like, that's not why I go to I don't go to the Muppets to live in the real world. I go to the Muppets, you know, for kind of this fantasy world where, you know, I get to escape that, and everything's okay. Yeah. And they have adventures and they do fun stuff. So a lot of that comes from my expectations and what I put on these characters that I love. Right. What I realized in watching the first 3 episodes after that first episode is this is a brilliantly written TV show. The writing in this is
so good.
Very smart and very, very funny. And what they get right, and this is what I do love about the show, what they get right is the thing that the Muppets have always gotten right, is the idea of Muppets being a natural part of the real world. Mm-hmm. When normal human beings interact with them.
Like when Fozzie goes on a date and meets the parents, and they're like, you know, you're a bear, and, you know, you go to the bathroom in the woods, and he's like, I take offense to that.
Yeah.
That is a stereotype.
Yeah, they don't say you're a Muppet. They say you're a bear.
A bear.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? So they get that part right enough, and that's clever enough, and the take they're doing on current TV shows is clever enough that I have fallen a little bit in love with the show in that way. I almost wish it was a different set of Muppets. Like it wears on the nostalgia for me a little bit for these kids. Like, I don't want to see the depressed and down Kermit all the time. You know what I mean? Like, who's dealing with, you know, job woes and all this. It's just like, that's not...
I don't know, but to see him as a person,
sure,
who has been putting on this
a frog
show,
person, but yes,
you know, for all these years and keeping it together for all these years, and we're finally getting to crack into that part of him that is stressed out, that, you know, it's that dynamic of going into a person and seeing that other side of them, and it can be disappointing. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm on the side that I like it, is because I have come to this place where I'm just like, these are dynamic individuals. They have dynamic feelings and experiences. And I think that's where I've landed. Although I completely relate with you, Aaron, because when they first started to do like the very sexual conversation that they had in episode 1, it's just through the whole thing. There's like these sexual comments and things like that. And, you know, even in how Kermit talks about meeting his new girlfriend and, you know, he kind of like does like the pause and then he chooses his next word carefully to describe their relationship. And there's all this very thick undertone of sexuality and things like that. I did feel a little bit like, oh, I didn't think I was going to have to be thinking about these things with these characters.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
now I'm thinking about these things with these characters.
Right.
And it does change it just a little bit. I guess I have a choice to make. I am either going to choose to like go along with it and enjoy it, or let him ruin the Muppets, and I'm not going to let him ruin the Muppets for me. I love the Muppets too much.
It reminds me in some ways, this is probably a poor analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. It reminds me of the Star Wars Christmas special, where you've got
the Chewbacca one?
Yeah, where you've got
that
these...
was so bad.
I know. Well, you've got these characters that you know from this universe, and then you put them in this whole different setting. It's like, those aren't the characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, it treats them in a different way. So
Except for that these characters are doing exactly what we've seen them do before. They're putting on a show.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is that. That is true.
They're in their element. We're seeing them meet before the show to talk about this and that. And I love how it's so smartly done. They cut between their scenes. Miss Piggy is about to interview somebody. Then it cuts to behind the scenes, and Miss Piggy is on the camera behind the scene, you know, in the back of their like studio area, and it's somebody else watching her, you know, live. You're moving through like 30 Rock. You're moving through, you know, this. It's really, really smartly done, and
it's genius. It's brilliantly written.
And the people that are going to be wanting to get involved in this are endless. The celebrities that want to come and play with the Muppets,
and those work. By the way, the celebrity cameos work.
They work really,
Bergeron
really well.
Is hilarious.
Oh my, that was so funny.
So I'm hoping that they kind of find their groove. They find that they find the lines that they want to kind of go into, and you know, things do change. There are franchises that change. There are storylines that change. There are characters that change, and I think that that's part of the.
I think the struggle is the Muppets have always been in many ways amoral to me. Like I didn't have to worry about moral questions with them.
Yeah.
And in this universe, now I'm judging the Muppets. Like I'm judging their moral choices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a little. It's weird, and I don't like being put in that position. You know, where I'm like, you know, second guessing their moral choices as puppets.
It is something that you want to consider before, you know, maybe sitting down and watching this with kids, because
for sure.
There's a really, really good chance that all of a sudden your child is going to be asking you questions that are going to come up from not just insinuated sexuality, but direct commentary, or, you know, that might be something that.
Well, let's be careful. I don't want people to think it's explicit.
No.
It's not explicit.
I would put it in middle school humor, because
I would agree with that.
Because, you know, drinking and stuff like that, that's what kids in middle school talk about. You know, it's not like this is a dark HBO awful show. No.
Game of Muppets.
I would put it in the same comedy realm of what you would find in Modern Family or Parks and Rec.
No, I totally agree. And that was an interesting conversation we had. Was you were like, is this? You thought it was more dirty than most TV, and I said, you haven't been paying attention to other TV shows if you think that. I mean, it's the same level.
And maybe it's because but I felt that they really laid it on thick the first episode. I felt like it was not as thickly laid on as far as like shocking statements in episode 2 and episode 3.
I think it's just a reaction to seeing the Muppets do it.
But maybe
think
that
that's what it is.
Or do you think they were trying to make a statement like, hey, this is what the show, this is the stuff could find in the show. Fair warning.
Could be.
Spartanite mentions in the comment, the Muppets were originally, so when Jim Henson first created them, they were not always family friendly.
Oh, no. They were, when their creation was not intended, they just became that because people loved them so much. And the movies then reinforced that aspect of them. So, in all honesty, if people say this is the Muppets getting back to their intentional, you know, their original purpose, they're probably right.
Yeah.
This is, you know, what Jim Henson was thinking when he created them, likely.
See, I love this side of the Muppets, and I also love the child-friendly version of the Muppets. I'm with both ends. I love it to death. And this is one, if you're young or if you're old enough, you remember this as the old show. And you're like, Yeah, they're bringing it full circle now,
and boldly so. They're being bold about it. I really am enjoying it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be a fan of the show, and I hope that it gains some momentum with other people. I mean, watching Muppets on the television, it's just it's an interesting experience because I'm used to seeing them in cartoons. I'm used to seeing them in movies. I'm used to, so it's like tuning into Modern Family.
I'll keep watching. If for no other reason than the humor, it is but my kids won't be watching.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land.
After I watched the show and I was so in love with all the episodes, I went on the message boards just to see, oh man, people are going to love this show just as much as I did. And when I found out that I was in the minority, that a lot of people don't like the show, I actually got anxious. I'm like, oh no, I have to save this show somehow.
I know, that's what I feel too.
Like, I got to tell people to watch this show. I have to make people watch the show. I got to
tweet about it.
I have to.
Clockwork Orange style.
Whatever I can do.
We should write to Kermit. We should write to Kermit and let him know that we're on board.
Yeah.
Let Kermit know. Which finally they did.
Show the door. They're big fans of my show.
Yeah. What if he mentions us on the show?
Oh man.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah, we're available for cameos.
Yeah.
Just so you know. So everybody knows. Well, thanks, guys. Any other thought? One more thing on the Muppets? I'm pretty clean.
Nope, I'm good.
I've said my piece.
One last thing. I love how they're not making them out to be the huge celebrities we know them as. Like, people aren't going down the street like, oh my gosh, that's Kermit the Frog.
I don't know, the Miss Piggy thing.
No, with Miss Piggy, she is the celebrity.
Right, okay.
But everybody else, like the Gonzos and the Rizzos, they're just sitting at the bar and people are just like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Miss Piggy doesn't even know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
No longer safe with Kermit was mentioned in the chat.
Nice.
Perfect.
Danae, did you have anything else you want to hit on the Muppets?
I think I'm good.
Excellent. All right, let's do very quickly our buried treasure for this week. And
Aaron, you want to start?
Sure, I can start. Absolutely. I'm going to go with another TV show. This may happen here in the next few weeks because there are so many that are coming out that I'm checking out. I was not expecting to like this show. I'd heard negative things about it, but I am on board with Limitless. I have enjoyed the transition it's made from a movie to a TV show. Now, if you remember the original original movie was Bradley Cooper, and he takes the pill and all of a sudden has access to his entire brain. One of the things I really love about this is Bradley Cooper is involved. He's in some of the scenes. His character from the movie is a part of this universe still, and it expands this universe in a way that I think is interesting. And I like the main guy who's playing the main character. I think he's fun to hang out with.
Here's a question for you: do you think that the shtick of it has lasting life, or that it'll go on, or do you think it's just going to be like a 1 or 2 season show and the people are going to be tired of it? Like, so okay, we get it. He's smart.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing: the idea of solving mysteries never gets old. Since Sherlock Holmes, the mystery solving thing has been in all forms of media. There's always a new way to paint it, always a new thing to do. I remember a friend saying when CSI, the very first CSI in Las Vegas, debuted, that was his exact comment to me. He was like, that's going to get old so fast. Nobody's going to want to watch another, how a crime scene is going to be solved by, the shoe was untied. In 5 versions of CSI later.
That's very, very true. That's
you know what I
true.
mean? So I think it all has to do with the writing of the mystery. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the concept. Concepts can always be broadened into mystery. And so that's why I think it has that potential. Now, will it maintain interest? I don't know. You never know. There's a lot of factors.
But for right now, you're on board.
For right now, I'm on board, and I've seen just the first 2. So I usually like to see 3 before I make kind of a final call. But I really liked those first 2 episodes.
Interesting.
Yep. So Limitless is my buried treasure this week. Danae, you want to go next?
Yep. I'm going to go with one of my favorite webcomics. As most of you know, I love webcomics. I used to read them all the time, and I've finished several. But there's one right now called What Birds Know. And the people who have been writing this one for years now are bringing the storyline to a close. So the good thing about mentioning a webcomic that's coming to a close means that if you start reading it and you're just absorbing it and you just go through it really, really fast, you don't have to wait too long to see everything kind of come together. So there are other webcomics that are going to be going on for years and years and years and years and years. In fact, there was one that I read that went on for I think I read it daily, Monday through Friday, for 4 years before it ended, and it had been going on for many years before that. Every single day they added something new. So there's tons of them out there, but this particular one's really good. It's got mystery, and I like the drawings in it. Again, it's called What Birds Know.
Are birds involved?
I can't tell you.
Oh, it's all a secret.
Sorry about that.
Suspense is killing me.
I'm going to link it in the chat, and then, of course, it'll be in our shoe notes on
Speaking
our website.
of webcomics, I briefly saw several panels from something called like Heart and Brain or Heart versus Brain or something. I thought those were hilarious if you want to look those up online. Go ahead.
Interesting. I am going to be promoting a podcast.
Do it.
Ooh.
Yes, it is. It's not like a talk show podcast.
Is it your own podcast?
It
Are
is
you
not
log rolling?
my own.
Okay,
No.
that's fine. I mean, if you want to log roll, that's fine. I just,
Flick Freaks podcast. You can find it on iTunes. No, this is actually a leading up story to Halo 5.
Okay.
A lot of people just know Halo as just a random video game with like, oh, you're a cyborg man who's shooting aliens.
It's kind of the original first-person shooter, wasn't it? I mean,
Oh, Doom was.
well, I mean the one where FPSs became like.
You could probably make the
multicultural.
case that for console FPSs, you can give a lot of credit for console FPSs to Halo.
Yeah.
But,
It was the first one I remember my friends trying to drag me into.
And there was actually a book that came out a long time ago. It was called The Fall of Reach. And you find out that, oh, wait, there's actually an incredible story behind Halo.
They're making a movie, right?
They've been making a movie forever.
Okay.
But actually, District 9, the long time ago, that was actually supposed to be the Halo movie.
Oh, interesting.
And half of the scenes from that movie were what you would have seen in Halo. But they, what's his name? Peter Jackson quit halfway through. He's like, no, I'm not going to make the Halo movie because you're not making it the way it should be done. So they gave it to Neil Blomkamp, who made District 9, with what those scenes would have been. And it turned out to be a great movie. But back to this. You find out after reading this book, oh, wait, there's this amazing story of how Master Chief is actually, there's a dark story of how he was actually kidnapped as a child, and he was genetically engineered to become this soldier. He was kidnapped by the government. And this is before like the aliens and stuff were invading, stuff like that. And now there's this podcast. It's called Hunt the Truth, which actually has a remarkable cast behind it for voice actors and stuff. They have Keegan-Michael Key, Phil Lamar, Troy Baker, what's his name? Kobe Smulders, Camille Nanjiani's in this as well.
Interesting.
And you're listening to this and you're like, so this is a podcast which writing is up there with what you would find in an Aaron Sorkin, like political.
That's really cool.
You're like, wait a minute, this is actually a good story.
And I'm glad that's happening because a lot of people think a podcast is talking heads, which is what most podcasts are. That's what our podcast is
Blah, 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 talking heads.
Yeah.
it's people talking about stuff. But it can be a performance art as well. It can be a storytelling medium in that way.
So there's 17 episodes. They just wrapped up season 1 and they're going into finishing up season 2 right before Halo 5 Guardians comes out. So if you're a Halo fan and you have read the book Fall of Reach, and you're looking for something to tie into Halo 5, this is what you need to listen to. You can listen to the whole thing in probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Very cool.
It'll blow your mind.
Very cool.
Well, here we all are at the end of the podcast.
Oh no, it's
always
time
so
for the
sad.
outro music. Oh, no.
Boom.
And there it is. Aww.
It's official now.
Well, thank you guys for checking out this episode of SiftPop with Critic, the Geek, and the Girl. We are more than happy to be your hosts through the world of pop culture every week. Every Friday at noon, we're live, and then it's available in the podcast. Just search for SiftPop in iTunes or Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a rating. All that fun stuff helps us out.
And special thanks to all of our supporters at Patreon. Thank you so much for making this show possible. Today we want to thank Ruth. Ruth, thank you so much for your monthly gift to us at patreon.com/Aaron and Danae. It makes all of this possible, and we know that you could spend that money doing something else, but you choose to support us, so thank you.
Means the absolute world, and we will be back next week on SiftPop, probably to, what are we chatting next week? Do you remember? There's movies coming out and stuff. We'll be chatting that. Think happy thoughts.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of SiftPop Spoilers.
SiftPop Spoilers, SiftPop Spoilers, SiftPop Spoilers, SiftPop Spoilers, SiftPop Spoilers.
Charge!
We are again joined by...
Sorry, Aaron, I thought I started talking.
No, you're fine. What were you going to say?
I was going to say every Friday after our show, we record our spoilers.
That's right. And we're joined once again by Andrew from Flick Freaks, who was with us
here.
for the podcast proper.
Here I am.
And this is kind of a layback way to kind of get a little more detailed in case you don't care about spoilers. Or maybe you've seen it and, kind of wanting to hear what we thought about some of the specific stuff that happens in the movie. And, of course, we're talking Pan and the origin story of Peter Pan and Captain Hook and Tiger Lily and Smee and all those peoples.
We're going to jump right into the spoilers with Peter Pan. He is an orphan in London, and there is this really interesting situation where the children are being basically taken out of the orphanage through the ceiling by suspended pirates at one point in time. And so I guess what's happening is that the nuns minions are being paid off by Blackbeard to take the children and use them in the mines of Neverland.
So Blackbeard is basically controlling Neverland. He is the guy at the top of the food chain, and there are thousands and thousands of these orphans of all ages taken from all over the world that he is using to mine for Pixum, which is pixie dust.
When the flying ship arrives to drop off the children that have been kidnapped, let's just go ahead and say what song they are singing.
They're singing "Entertain Us" from Nirvana.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they all know it word for word.
We went from World War II to grunge rock from the 90s. It was a very interesting transition.
It's a glorious scene.
And then they start singing the Ramones.
They do. They sing the Ramones as well.
Were those the only two? Was there a third song?
I think there was a third, but I didn't really catch what it was.
Yeah, it seems to me there was a third song that I couldn't identify either.
That they were singing in the Tribe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, before they all exploded into powder.
Yeah, for sure. There was a third song. I just can't remember what it was. But it had those anachronistic song choices, songs from, their future.
So it's described and explained by Blackbeard that this mine is to find Pixum, which is, it looks like crystal. Mm-hmm. And inside the crystal is contained pixie magic. And we learned that he is basically keeping himself alive forever by huffing through a special device, the Pixum dust, to keep himself young. So you kind of see Blackbeard in several states of digress. You kind of see his eyes really black and kind of like he's getting old. And then when he goes to rejuvenate, he looks just like this wizened, old, creepy man. And then he puts this mask on, inhales the dust, and he's young and fresh again, which kind of makes sense as to his speech that he gives at one point in time. Once they discover that Peter Pan can fly, they have this exchange where he's saying that Neverland is the place where it's the dream, that deep dream you can never wake from, and that there's a heaviness to never being able to wake up. And do you know what that really is? It's death. And so you have this really deep sense that he's in a lot of, he's been around for a really, really long time. Mm-hmm. And he says, "Have you come to kill me?" Because there's a prophecy about this boy returning to Neverland who can fly. And you can see in Hugh Jackman's performance and in Blackbeard that he kind of wants to die. He's sort of like, there's part of him that's had that sort of release feel to it.
There's a longing for it in some ways.
Yeah, and he wasn't feeling very well at the time. His eyes were kind of they had a lot of bags under the eyes. But after he gets his Pixum dust, he's back to his chipper, young self. And so that's kind of the premise of the start of the movie.
I think it's important to mention, too, that Peter doesn't know he can fly, that it's an accidental discovery. He's kicked off for, punishment for something he didn't do. He walks the plank, and before he hits the ground, he floats.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, this kid can fly. So it's not like something that he meant to do or he knew he could do. That was actually part of the movie I kind of struggled with story-wise, which is...
How did he come to terms with being able to fly?
Float?
Yeah.
If he didn't know...
thoughts.
But if he didn't know about it and he didn't know to do it,
when Blackbeard kicks him off, he says, think happy thoughts. And so I thought that was going to have a payoff.
But it didn't.
But it didn't have a payoff.
Well,
he never has a revelation.
About his mom or something like
but
that.
They never talk about that, even when he flies later on. And when he flies again later in the movie, in fact, he only flies one more time that we see, kind of because he's afraid of heights and doesn't know how to just make himself fly. He is doing that to save Captain Hook, or I wish to say James Hook, I guess at this point.
Should have let him fall.
So he goes to save him, but again, I thought maybe he would be he would have some kind of a revelation as to why he could fly, but there was never a payoff for that.
And I thought the other reason is I always thought in the original stories that it was a combination of pixie dust and thinking happy thoughts.
They do
Peter,
change
it's
that.
not.
Nope.
For Peter, it's not. And I don't even know that it was in the original.
Yeah, it's
as
not.
well.
It's not really ever.
So I don't know how Peter flies, and so I'm wishing they would have.
Well, he
explained
flies
that a little
because
bit
he's
more.
a hybrid human pixie.
Right. But if he doesn't know how to do it,
Spoiler.
yes, that is kind of the key element of what happens in his story.
So he is in the mine with Captain Hook. That's actually where they end up meeting with James Hook. James Hook is also in the mine. And when James Hook sees Peter fly, he decides to break him out and use his ability to fly to escape from this prison, get on a ship, and get out.
Did you find it weird that the tool that he always likes to use is his hook? That's another one of those references where it's like...
I missed it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Like the tool is like one of those hooks you grip.
Oh, I didn't even...
He used that to break through stuff and that kind of stuff. And it was just like foreshadowing that, again, feels a little forced to me. But
I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked all that stuff.
Yeah.
When they escape... actually, I guess we should also say that during the conversation between Blackbeard and Peter, Blackbeard explains to Peter... that there was a prophecy and all this stuff. So when they escape together, Hook, Smee, and Peter wants to find his mom. He believes that because of a note that she had left him, that there's a possibility she's on this island, and he believes that James is going to help him get there, that Hook is going to help him to kind of get there. So they, one of the things that Blackbeard had mentioned was that he was going to lead a revolt with the warriors. They get a map. They go to the Warriors. This is where they meet Tiger Lily and that whole crew. While they're there is when Peter really learns the first part of his story, which is that there was a big fight between Blackbeard and all of his men and the Fairy Kingdom. And the Fairy Kingdom, he destroyed it. He destroyed all of the fairies. And so therefore there was no more pixie dust to be had. And so that's why they have to mine so much to keep him alive. But all the fairies actually flew to a secret location and have been living in secret until the great Pan returns. Mm-hmm. So he learns more about that and is told his mom is there. There's a big fight between the pirates when they kind of come, and there's like this moment where the pirates come and they fight the warriors. What did you guys think of that scene? That's one of my
where they exploded into blue and yellow dust. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
what?
I thought that was really interesting. That was one of my favorite ways to show trauma in a kid's film. Because whenever they get shot...
I thought it was a cop-out.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They all exploded into like this... It's kind of like the dust that you see on the Color Run, When
it was Color Run.
It was Color Run
it was exactly. I'll tell you this. I didn't understand until just now that was them dying.
Are you serious?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. It's that far away from reality that I didn't realize that that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
That they exploded into dust.
Yeah.
So
whenever the natives, what we're saying is, whatever the natives in the movie, whenever they die, they just explode into poof, just dust.
Really bright, colorful dust.
Mm-hmm. I remember when because one of the key moments is when Blackbeard kills the native leader, and then Tiger Lily is now their leader.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a poof of dust from like underneath where Pan was watching, or Hook was watching, or somebody was watching, and I was just I didn't catch that that's what had happened. I thought they just had like they threw a dust bomb or something.
Yeah. I thought I liked it. It kind of reminded me of Hook, with the whole like really colorful food fight kind of a thing,
It's probably not the movie's fault. It's probably my own stupidity's fault. I'm telling you that that's on me, not them necessarily. But I didn't catch that.
That scene was forced in a lot of ways because they have to give some information. They have to try to get Peter Pan, this kid, to the Fairy Kingdom, because that's the whole thing, is trying to like fulfill this prophecy. So they're trying to kind of move the story in that direction to the movie's climax, which is when Hook goes to the Fairy Kingdom and everybody's at the Fairy Kingdom, and of course, I'm not Hook, Blackbeard. Blackbeard's going to try to like kill them all. This is the climax of the film, is both Peter having a moment where he realizes that he's this princeling. He also discovers from them that in this great battle of the past between Blackbeard and the fairies, that there was a fairy who fell in love with a human girl, and the human girl was actually Blackbeard's girlfriend. And so
was it his girlfriend or the girl he wanted to be his girlfriend?
I don't know.
I think they were together.
It gave the impression that Blackbeard was dating this woman.
Okay.
And
who's the dad?
And she was being visited by a fairy.
The Prince Fairy. Who's the Prince Fairy?
Just generic.
Just a generic?
Yeah.
Never really revealed himself. Which I thought was also... So the movie is very much about a mother relationship, which a lot of a throwback to Peter Pan, that whole the whole thing, because it's always about like motherless and orphans and things like that's kind of like the feel of all that. So I understood that, but they really downplayed the whole like your dad's a fairy prince. You know?
The threesome we have that are on their way to the fairy kingdom are Peter Pan, James Hook,
who just found out that he is half fairy, half human.
Peter did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And James Hook's there and Tiger Lily. That threesome.
Hook found a ship, got it floating. He wants to leave. He returns back to kind of save the day. And Tiger Lily has also been captured.
Two relationships are developing between Hook and Pan. It's almost like a older brother, younger brother type relationship that I think they're supposed to be developing. And between Hook and Tiger Lily, which is supposed to be a romantic relationship that they're developing.
Totally failed.
I didn't buy either of those relationships.
No.
I didn't buy the relationship between Pan and Hook, and I didn't buy the relationship between Hook
There were some
Tiger Lily.
moments that worked. You know, there were some moments where you're like, oh, okay. You know, I thought the kid did the best job of trying to interact with, you know, James Hook, you know, with putting his hand out to shake it and also, you know, asking for help and things like that. They didn't emote to each other very well enough for us to see emotion in what they were saying, or in between in those downtime moments.
As an aside, the other ridiculous moment that I was talking about that I didn't want to spoil was in the water with the alligators.
So this is part of their journey to the fairy kingdom.
And when they meet the mermaids and all that kind of stuff, the Hook like has his hand in the water when there's alligators, and he pulls it out and he rubs his hand like, oh no, I hope an alligator doesn't bite my hand off. It was just too much foreshadowing.
That part I did like.
Yeah.
The Hook part, yeah.
Even like the rubbing of the hand and everything, like it just seemed like, again, it means he had knowledge that he didn't have.
There has to be some foreshadowing, I think, and that was one of the ones I didn't mind. But there were a bunch that you said earlier I do agree with.
Also, that was a giant alligator.
Good Lord.
Let's just be honest.
Crocodile.
It was a crocodile.
That
Oh,
was
man.
amazing.
Get it right.
I was like,
I didn't know
when it comes up out of the water, I didn't get my eyes closed fast enough. It was very, very disturbing.
I didn't know if that was saltwater or fresh, so I didn't know for sure. But
This is fantasy. It's memories, Aaron. The water has been infused with memories.
yes, it
has
has
from the past.
Yes, it has.
I actually really thought the scene was beautiful. Again, a lot of really beautiful things in this movie, even the costuming, and I really enjoyed it. They're floating down this like river with like a real thin kind of, I don't even know what you would call, like a ravine type. I don't know.
Just a river.
Yeah, it's got this depth to it, and it's got these tall rocks on either side, and there's cliff faces on either side, and they're in this sort of like mix between a nest of twine and colorful fabric. It shouldn't float, but it does. And then there's this whole crocodile scene, and that was just, it was really terrifying and really cool at the same time. That was the most tense I felt the entire movie. And Peter falls off of the boat, and he's being drug under the water, you know, by his shirt. And that's when the mermaids appear. And I just want to say, I loved, and I know I said this in the show proper, I love the way that they portrayed the mermaids.
They were all the same actress, right?
Yeah.
They all had the same, they were all basically twins of each other or whatever, which you don't really know for sure. You're like, are they just really similar? I think
they talked like dolphins.
They don't use, I loved that
They weren't electric eels, they weren't fish.
Yeah, they had bioluminescence.
Yep. And they were able to use them for
Nightlights
and weaponry.
The crocodile.
And weaponry.
That's right.
I thought they were really cleverly done. And
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't have
cool.
like a major role where they come up out of the water like, Peter, you've got to fulfill your destiny and go to the fairy kingdom. You know, it's
No, they were just more like, "Aka, aka."
They did not do that. They just made clicking noises. They didn't do that. It was just it was clicking noises only. No. So they take them to this cove where Tiger Lily, James, and Peter are dropped off. And while they were being invaded, when they were back at the village and they were being under attack by the pirates, Blackbeard tells Peter that he had killed his mom. And so Peter's now upset because he's like, you guys lied to me. You said my mom was alive. And, you know, now she's dead. So what is it? What's the truth? And Tiger Lily says something like, yeah, we told you that your mom was alive so that you would fulfill the prophecy.
I hated that.
That was
so
awful.
much.
That was so terrible. It's like she believed so much in the prophecy that she would die for it, but she would lie to a kid because she thinks that that's the only way to fulfill the prophecy. It just didn't make sense. I think
I
it was
hated that part so much.
It was meant to make us feel emotion and maybe see emotion in this kid, and it was frustrating. But so when they're in this cove, he was like, he talks to Tiger Lily, and Tiger Lily says, well, the water has been infused with memories, and so just take a deep breath and go underwater, and you'll see stuff. And so he does. And even though that stuff bugs me, it's like, oh, that's convenient. It was such a cool visual, because the first time that we have a recap of history, it's with like a tree.
Yeah, the tree
and
rings.
The
that was
tree
cool.
rings kind of comes up in this 3D way, and all these waves, and you're seeing this whole battle, and it was just really coolly done. Really, really nice. This one's all in bubbles and like dark, like earth.
Yeah.
And it was really cool looking. And this is when we see more about his mom, who was apparently like this really awesome warrior chick.
Yeah.
So we learn that she actually battled Blackbeard, and she did die, but she was amazing. And so this kind of infuses Peter with this determination to, do his mom and dad proud.
I have to say, we're getting there quickly. So we get to the Fairy Kingdom, right? And we have this battle where Blackbeard has followed them there, and he's going to try to take out all the fairies, which that was disturbing. The burning of the fairies,
so terrible.
Where did pirates get flamethrowers?
I don't know.
They did
same place they got Nirvana.
They did though. They have just straight up blowtorches, just torching, and all these fairies are just like, you see the smoke of them like.
Yeah. It was a little disturbing.
It really was. It was awful.
In a movie that otherwise shied away from, kind of that thing. It was notable to me.
It was awful.
So we get to this final battle, which overall as a battle,
poor fairies.
Poor fairies. I didn't think the action was shot very well in that final scene.
No.
It was confusing. It wasn't, you weren't always sure where your characters were
or what they were
doing, who they were fighting, so you couldn't really follow along.
We're standing over here. We're hanging off of this. We're jumping over here.
Yeah. And eventually Peter has to fly to save the day. And it's supposed to be this glorious moment where he finally figures out how to fly. And it just didn't ring true with me. Like, I just didn't get that feeling of like when Dash runs on water, or when, it's just, I just didn't have that.
We didn't see Peter have a revelation about what made
That's
him,
it. That's it. Yes.
Dash on water, and to compare it to The Incredibles, he had a confidence in himself. Something changed and shifted in himself.
Right.
But what happened with Peter was that he was going to save somebody. And that, I think, is what we're supposed to believe, is he made a choice to jump off of a ship, dive down, and save someone. Yeah. And I believed it a little bit, but it missed the mark for me overall.
That was the last Airbender scene I was talking about earlier. Remember when he's surrounded by fairies and he's like using him as a projectile and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I wondered.
That looks kind of like what happened in that Shyamalan Airbender awful movie.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So he, first of all, how old do you think Peter is in this?
9.
Yeah.
So as a 9-year-old, he's able to lift a full-grown man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He has superpowers.
And flying?
That bothered me.
Yeah.
I was like, shouldn't you just like sprinkle some fairy dust to make this more like I was just that bugged me. But anyway, so he saves James Hook, and then he like really starts to gain confidence, and he starts to be talk to the fairies around him, and they all kind of start to gather around him and this is what I call the Peter hive mind, because somehow he begins to like enforce this plan to wave his arms around and then like shoot his hand out in front of him like flame on kind of a thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then the fairies follow his intention, and they just begin to simultaneously attack the pirates that
like some sort of flesh-eating disease or something.
Yeah.
It was really strange.
It was strange. It was a strange way to end it. If it was supposed to be very climactic, and it really wasn't. Like the biggest climactic moment for me was again the crocodile thing. That was just like, whoa, that was.
And the other piece that doesn't work in that for me, and maybe this is a reason that the movie overall I have such an issue with, is because the end doesn't work for me on any level. The other part is all of a sudden then the fairies form the
memory of
his message from his mom, but
the presence of the mom.
But she's
maybe
interacting with him, and like he's supposed to feel this is some sort of moment with his mom, but he knows it's the fairies. Like I was so confused by that. Like, is there something spiritual going on here? Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do.
I wish they would have explained that a little bit more too. I felt that as well, because that's the thing. Like, after this big battle is over, and Blackbeard's ship crashes with him on it, and then they're all kind of standing there, and then the fairies form into
so that she can tell him he did a good job and that she's proud of him,
and he can say, "I have your eyes."
Oh, that was the worst line of the entire movie.
That was uncomfortable.
I have your eyes. Those aren't her eyes. Those are fairies.
First of all, shouldn't you be like, Mom? Like, wouldn't that?
Yes.
Mom?
Shouldn't you be confused? Shouldn't you be like, wait,
are you here?
Are you? Is that you? Or are you?
Yeah.
Are these fairies? Like, what's going on right now?
I don't know. I was laughing out loud whenever he said, "I have your eyes."
I have your eyes. I'm like, oh no, don't say that. So the end of the movie pretty much is, Peter Pan really understanding kind of who he is as far as, being a confident flyer. The fairies are now saved. Those that survived are, instead of hiding out in this, cavern, can now go free into the world, and there's celebrations galore. And then Peter Pan returns to London with the pirate ship again, but this time with his friends, and they all rescue the orphans that are being held captive by the insane.
That was another thing. The relationship
nuns.
I loved the most was between him and his best friend in London.
I know,
and they were not in the movie again till the end. And I'm like, man, you developed that relationship really well, and then abandoned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are two things I have to say before we wrap this up.
Sure,
First
do
of
it.
all, I didn't know what kind of movie this was going to be until I saw a pirate ship versus the Nazi Luftwaffe. I'm like, oh god,
it's that kind of movie.
That kind of a movie, and you're like, pirates fighting Nazi fighter jets, or I'm not going to be able to enjoy
Was it
this.
a Nazi fighter jet?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was.
Well,
I
they
thought
were
it
British.
was the British fighter jet because
No,
they
those were
were
the Nazis invading.
Well, the Nazis were invading, but I think the British thought the pirate ships were the Nazis.
the
They were
Nazi.
Nazi planes. They had
weird.
the swastika.
Because I thought they were in the British headquarters. I thought they were commanding them to go after
they had
him.
the British headquarter thing going on. So, but anyways, that's interesting.
Yeah, I saw. I'm like, oh no, not that kind of movie.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, this is a movie you immediately suspend. You're in real life, but then you're also just not at all in real.
Yeah.
And the last thing I have to say that really struck me, like, oh, I don't like this at all. The entire premise of this is a prequel to see whenever Peter Pan and Hook are friends and then they become enemies.
Yeah.
You don't see that happen.
No, that's not coming until the sequels.
Yeah, and I hope, honestly, I hope there are no sequels. If your kids love the movie, then great, but I don't see how this has the legs to get sequels.
Yeah.
Because they lied to me.
Don't lie to me.
The entire time with like trailers and stuff, like see how the Hook-Pan relationship unfolds and how at the end they're enemies. But at the end of the movie, it's like, hey, James, we're going to be friends forever, right? Yep. Credits. You're like, what?
Can't see
what?
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
I'm going back to my
in the
notes.
sequel. You know what? You can do this kind of movie right. Baz Luhrmann makes these kind of movies, and he does them right, where it's over the top and stylistic, but you still buy the story, and you still buy the characters, and you still... Like, Moulin Rouge is a great example of a movie like this that works. There's anachronistic music in it. Yeah. There's, crazy over-the-top performances, but you buy in. And you feel for these characters. So you can do this kind of thing. It just takes a real great cast and a great touch.
Do you think if this was a cartoon, it would have had stronger legs to stand on?
Oof. No.
Really?
No, I don't. I think
I like that they were real.
Yeah, I think the live action works for it, actually.
Yeah, I do too. I think that there would have been things that would have been...
Hugh Jackman obviously wouldn't have been as amazing as it was.
Right.
But
Hugh Jackman
Peter
was awesome.
Pan's flying, like you said, just like a tightrope, swinging him back and forth looks so fake. I'm like...
This is better than the live Peter Pan.
I was going to say, at least we didn't have Christopher Walken.
With Christopher Walken. Did you see that?
Hi! Captain Hook.
Did you see that?
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Oh my goodness. That was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever
Save
watched.
me from the crocodiles.
Yeah. So,
anything else spoiler-wise?
No, I think that's it. I always like going over the spoilers, and we hope that you guys do too. Spoilers episode is only available in the SiftPop feed.
Or possibly on YouTube.
Or possibly on YouTube. That is true.
You might check it out there. So thanks for sticking with us, guys.
Next week, we are going to be reviewing
The Bridge of Spies.
Bridge of Spies.
Here you go.
Hanks.
Here's all you need to know. Tom Hanks stars. Steven Spielberg directs, and the Coen brothers wrote it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm worried.
Expectations off the charts.
I'm worried. What if I don't like it and you guys do?
Then you can't. Then that's your honest.
We will find out.
That is your truth.
Yeah.
If you have anything to add, any comments, suggestions, or whatever, you can always reach out to Aaron and I at aaronanddanae.com, or you can aaronanddanae@gmail.com if you want to send us an email.
Yeah.
We crave your feedback. Thanks again to our Patreon supporters for making this possible. We are fully fan funded, so we do this because fans are making it possible for us to continue to do the show. So
you start at $1 every month, and that means a lot to us. Helps us keep doing this thing. So go to patreon.com/AaronandDanae, and we will
see you next week.
We will thank you for that, and we'll see you next week.